see you.
Likewise.
I can make you one real fast.
And we're home and I'm logging off and my wife kind of gave me, you get 10 minutes. I'm like, oh.
I'm trying to find the agenda right now too.
Just,
What's going on with our website, Keith?
thank you for saying that.
So boards and committees.
There you go. It's weird because your screen, it doesn't really
Okay.
adjust to the screen size, unfortunately.
Okay, so here it is, 22.
It should be, yep.
This one. Okay.
Hey, can you hear me, testing?
Okay. We need one more member.
Thank you so much.
That would be either or more.
We hear back, someone's not coming.
They did not, nobody told me they weren't coming yet. Lynn normally comes.
Okay, so yeah.
Michael's on.
Michael, okay.
Michael Jones is on?
Let's do it.
Oh, good, okay, that does it.
Hey, Mike, can you hear us? Mike settings. What's it show?
There's a phone, I think he's calling from the phone.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Yeah,
We have to download the phone.
I think, or I don't know what this is here. It shows a.
It shows him, yeah.
Shows you how he does.
There you go.
Mike, can you hear us?
Hey, Michael, are you on?
Needs to adjust his mic settings.
Need knowledge via text or something.
Yeah.
I see something in the text.
Oh, I think that was from before. Let's see.
Oh, yeah.
Michael says he's here
Perfect.
in text.
Okay.
There we go.
Mike's not working.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're live now, and we can get started now. We have
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, members of the EDA. Good evening, guests. Good evening to those watching via YouTube. Good evening, city members and employees as well. For this June 2nd EDA meeting, we'd like to call the meeting to order at this time. And Madam Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Okay, very good. On May 28th, our city manager sent some read-aheads to include minutes from the last meeting, as well as a read-ahead for this meeting. The first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda as stated. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as it's written?
I move that we approve the agenda as written with any necessary edits.
Okay. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? I'm sorry, I didn't hear if I did.
Second.
Okay, thank you. It's second.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor, say aye. 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 All opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Madam Secretary, for the next agenda item, citizen time, do we have anyone scheduled?
No.
Okay, thank you. In that packet that the city manager sent to us, there were minutes from March 3rd. I trust that we had an opportunity to review those minutes, and so I wanted to take a moment to take any comments, questions, or suggested revisions. Are there any? All right, hearing none then, is there a motion then to approve the minutes for March 3rd, 2021?
I move.
Motion to approve.
I
Okay,
second.
we have a motion on the table to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right, none opposed. The motion is carried. Then the minutes from March 3rd, 2021 are approved. Next item of business on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Madam Secretary or Mr. City Manager, do you have any comment on the treasurer's report?
No comments.
It's right there.
Okay. Next item of business is old business, and there is no old business carrying over from any previous meeting, so we'll move on to new business, and we'll move on to item 7A, which is the city's suggested EDA support for a federal grocery grant. So, Mr. City Manager, I'll turn the floor over to you to give us a little bit of context on this item.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the EDA. So a few years ago, before we started our economic development strategy and downtown strategy, we started with some market analysis, actually first from a company called Arnett Muldrow, who's here with us tonight for the whole branding consultant. They ran some quick numbers when I first started with the city 4 years ago, just to kind of get me a feel for what the market dynamics were here. We then took the next step of partnering with a company called Street Sense to start developing actionable concept plans for our downtown and target lists for developers to make this happen. As part of that effort now, it's bearing fruit, and we have the downtown currently under development. One of the key things that we were trying to do once the downtown development agreements were signed was secure a grocer, a small market for across the street, the empty spaces on the left, what is known as Building B in Park 170, because that's where as part of the Phase 4 development, there's going to be a brand new parking lot built adjacent to that to address kind of the parking issues associated with across the street. One of the major reasons why you have vacancies there. And we had some kind of mixed results from grocers in our conversations. A lot of them want to see the rest of this take off first before they can commit. But what I realized early on is we needed some more kind of in-depth analysis from specific companies that target kind of the grocer recruitment process to develop the specific market analytics, comprehensive market analytics for grocers, fresh markets specifically, develop concept plans on 2 sites, not just across the street for our downtown for kind of a fresh or organic food option as part of our downtown, but also for the other side of the city in Kent Village Square to target the local, to fit more with kind of the local neighborhood shopping concept and largely Hispanic population on the western side of the city. So we want to run some numbers there, develop some concept plans for a couple sites in our city, and develop the business plans for both sites as well to really hand that off, because there has been some interest from local entrepreneurs who actually want to get into this in this field as well. So where they need to be empowered is by having some actionable business plan and some finances, some concept planning, kind of to get them kickstarted, or at least to show that concept to existing grocers as well. This is a federal grant from the USDA. The USDA is very interested in sourcing from local growers, not city, but kind of regional agricultural sector, supporting that and connecting kind of supply chains and providing food options to areas that don't have it. Our city, of course, We have a Department of Social Services. We manage the federal SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutrition program for our needy residents. We have over 400 residents who are on that program, and right now they have to take those federal dollars outside of our city or to purchase food items from convenience stores, which aren't the healthiest of food options. So this is why kind of this grant really fits in the mold, because it supports kind of developing that local agricultural business base. It supports communities with planning for the securing of grocers in their communities, and also partnering with kind of nonprofits and supporting food access like we did during COVID-19, where we partnered with some of the local nonprofits to help in that program. And that's the long-term goal of this as well, is to find an actual bring a local grocer into our city to keep our tax dollars within our city, attract external tax dollars in our city, provide healthier food options for all of our residents and those who are on federal assistance as well. All of that kind of gets combined into this program, and you can see the table. This is kind of a draft budget of what we're looking at, but this is in partnership between my office, the city manager office, and kind of my hat as the economic development director, and also Department of Social Services as well, along with other partners that we're looking at in the area for community outreach as well. For the market analysis, for the reaching out to kind of the grocers and suppliers as well. So there's multiple components to this, but again, this is just step one. This is to receive federal grant for planning. There is other federal grant opportunities to help with actual build out as well if we're successful here. So that would be kind of the next step next year, once we kind of get this done, get the initial planning done, and then can work with local entrepreneurs or whoever it is that can come and establish the 1 or 2 grocers in our community. Then we can reapply for some additional federal funding to help them out with their build-out plan as well. So where the EDA comes in play, again, federal grants, they want to see community involvement. And since the Economic Development Authority, again, is kind of a citizen board, right, that can help provide community input, you're the ideal kind of partner for this in terms of providing that community input as we start fleshing the numbers out, the concept plans out, performing kind of similar presentations to what you're going to get tonight from the branding consultants as well, just kind of providing a voice in that process as well. This is the start of it. So the request from city staff is to get a letter of commitment to essentially be that community input as part of this process as well, through your authority, and for the EDA to authorize the chair to sign the attached letter. You guys can edit the letter, however you all want as well before the chair signs it. But we want to submit that letter from the EDA as part of our application to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And with that, I'll field any questions y'all may have.
I have a question about this. Is this going to be a food pantry type of operation, or is it going to be more of like a food co-op where local farmers are supplying produce, or is it going to be like a mom's organic market that's a smaller chain that wouldn't worry about competition with the major 6 grocery stores we have right around us? Yeah,
it's the market analysis will tell us what's viable and what's not, right? So we did engage with specific businesses. I'm not going to mention their names, but ones that will have kind of a niche foothold, right? We don't have any kind of organic markets in this region. That's the interesting component as well. So we want to run the numbers. We want to see what the options are. But no, nothing's set in stone right now. We want to start with the analytics, because all we've been doing is shooting blind right now. We've been going out and just engaging directly with grocers, having them come out, check the site. They're interested in what's happening with the downtown, but again, it's the chicken or egg, right? They don't want to be the first in. They want to see what else is going to happen in the downtown. Is it going to be successful? Yes, let's see the movie theater here, and then that's a good draw for us. But right now, we want to start doing our due diligence and getting the numbers to tell them the story of what's viable here and why.
I had a question. My question is related to the comment you indicated that this grant is the first part of this process to entice and to try to kind of prime the pump, so to speak. But then you indicated that there's an additional cost of build out and that we would be going for grants for that. In the event that we don't get a grant for that, are we prepared to accept that risk and fund that from within the city?
I don't think the funding is necessary. It's another incentive tool, right? So you can work with partners, owners of properties to provide tenant improvements as well. That's very much on the table, I think. So I don't think it's critical, but it's part of the complete package right now that we don't have market power right now. Until the downtown is successful, we have to pull people in, right? Eventually, I hope people are going to be knocking on the door to come in here, but we're still in that phase of working hard to attract businesses. So whatever we can build as part of an incentive package, we want to do. So by doing this analysis, finding the right partners, then that opens the door. If they're interested, but they're looking for additional kind of support, that then we would look towards applying for those other grants on their behalf.
So what we're agreeing to here, if I can just summarize, is we're asking, the city is asking the EDA for a letter so that we can essentially go to the USDA to ask for this money to do this market analysis. Is that correct?
Yeah, the city staff is asking for the money, not the EDA. It's city staff.
Correct. So thank you. Thank you for that correction.
We're getting letters of support from community members. Yours is a letter of commitment, and your commitment is simply that you're going to provide some community input for the process. Ultimately, if we're successful in being awarded this money, before the city staff accepts money, we have to go back to the governing body and ask them, and that's the point. So we're applying for a lot of grants right now, just for situational awareness. The governing body authorized me to bring on a company, a grant writing company, almost a year ago now at this point, probably 10 months ago, and specifically to start exploring all different grant opportunities to help the city to fund our CIP, to help us out with economic development, whatever is needed. And so we've been targeting a lot of grants and writing them out, but it's really, you just don't know which grants are even going to get to what phase and whether you get approval. But before we actually accept the money, we always bring that back to the governing body for approval. So this is kind of the very, very early phase of this grant application process.
So members of the EDA, are there any other questions or comments related to the ask or to the letter? Or any suggested revisions?
No, I'm good. This is Michael. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Great to hear your voice, Michael.
Yep. No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. So then is there a motion then to approve the EDA authorizing the chairman to sign the letter on behalf of the EDA?
I'll move that that we sign the letter on behalf of the EDA.
Second.
A second? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
None opposed? The motion is carried. So the EDA has authorized the chairman to sign the letter on behalf of the EDA in support of this grant proposal. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, the next item of business then is the branding update. And gentlemen from Muldrow, we're happy to have you on. So we'll turn it over to you, Mr. City Manager, and the rest of the crew to provide this update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ben, do you want me to make you the presenter, or Trip? Who wants to be the presenter second?
If you'd make me presenter, Laszlo, that'd be great.
Okay. Let me know when you have that. Oops. Okay, you should have it now.
There we go. Yep.
Okay, so members of the EDA, just as a reminder, we've started a branding process for the city, and before we kind of get to final product, we wanted to engage the community. So tonight we're going to go over the results of that community input and also kind of some initial thoughts for the branding process as well. So Ben, I will turn it over to you. We have both Ben Muldrow and Trip Muldrow from Arnett Muldrow joining us today. So Ben.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. And Trip, I know we'll kind of tag team this, but as Laszlo said, this is a summary of the survey results that we have gotten from members of the community of Manassas Park, and then also our kind of first phase of recommendations as it relates to community branding strategies and kind of naming strategies for the downtown development. And we will kick off tonight's presentation with some of the survey results themselves. So, Trip.
Great. Thank you so much. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the authority. It's great to be here. We had good survey results, as is the case with many surveys. They start out very robustly and then they kind of taper off. We closed the survey last week. We had 223 total responses, and then we had of those 218 in English and 5 in Spanish. 66% completion rate, which is fairly normal in our line of work. Even if we design a perfect survey, we usually get attrition through the survey. People, they'll answer the first few questions and then they kind of trickle off. And usually that ranges between about 60 and 70%. We'll take one. What we wanted to do is ask for input on downtown vitality, community vitality as a whole, economic development, ideas for the future and character. And all this really relates to setting the stage for the brand identity. But I hope you'll see what we see in this is affirmation of a lot of the work that's already taking place in Manassas Park. It's always good to have this check, and see, certainly our task to do branding, but your citizens really do solidify the direction that you're already on in the community. So let's jump right into some of those results. As you might expect, on a survey of this nature, the vast majority are residents of the 20111 zip code. And we'll see in the next slide, 90%, you see where they identify from. And so, we have what we're looking at, 56% live in one, in East End or West End. You add on top of that another that live and work in the community. You could tick the box that was, your most appropriate one. Just a handful, of responses that were either visitors, business owners, or work, live on the border, have former residents, so forth. So again, the results that you're seeing tonight, by and large, are people who live in. So just helps to kind of get a little perspective on that. So on the next slide, this one is kind of a heat map. It really shows where, and it's a bit in order of people were asked to rank whether they strongly agree or agree, neutral disagree, or strongly disagree with the following statements. And at the top of the chart, is a great place to live. Far and away, we ended up having 45% of respondents either strongly agree or agree with that statement. Only 6% strongly disagree. And you can see it kind of goes down through the rank here, unique history and heritage. And then you have some things in here that you can see what people are striving for or want to have, great opportunities for dining, great opportunities for shopping. Huge difference there in their opinion on that. They felt like the respondents felt like that was a real need in the community, huge need. And and we're peppering these questions so that we can garner different kinds of information. Some of it's, is known nationally. We kind of expected that result. I'll note one thing on the survey that, having done many of these in various communities, you'll note the green bars in the middle that represent neutral. We are really not accustomed to seeing that many respondents fall in the neutral zone on things like a great place to live, a unique history and heritage, great community events. To have that land at 31, 34, 34% neutral, usually these are softball questions that we tend to have a lot more of a positive trend. But if you kind of go down through this and start looking at what people perceive as missing, you can kind of see where that neutrality kind of falls into place. It's kind of a, it's all right, And so what this does is it sort of speaks to a lot of the work that you all are doing, and you'll see this start to bear out as we continue. So let me dig deeper into some of the results. So the next one, how positive, and this is asking residents what they think others think of Manassas Park. And you see that we're looking at over half of the respondents are right at half feel like the surrounding area views Manassas Park as somewhat negative or negative. And I think there's a correlation. There seems to be a pretty strong correlation, especially when you look at the neutral zone, kind of falling right back in that 31% range, is that exterior perceptions are clouding resident, perceptions as well. Those are intertwined. So if a resident perceives that others don't think positively of their community, they may not themselves think as positively. And oftentimes when we do these kind of things, we get wildly different results. So we'll work in an area that's, somewhat tourism oriented or, visitor destination, and residents think others love it and they don't maybe love it quite as much. But you can see some of the comments people have made. And I love this first one that kind of runs through misconceptions. You'll see this run through the whole survey. And so these are just a sample of the comments. There's kind of a mix, better than it used to be. People don't know Manassas Park, high taxes, high crime. Keep in mind that these are what people think others think of Manassas Park. So next question, just 3 words to respond, and you get this funny mix here of the positive and again the boring. That's a neutral. I would much rather a resident say he's boring than to say it's horrible. And so you don't get, there's a rundown comment, but by and large, what you get is clean, community, diverse, expensive, family friendly, high taxes shows up over and over, home, quaint, quiet, residential. And so you get a lot of positives in here with just a handful of negatives and some of those phrases people use. So we're just picking the top positives that came out of this. If we were looking at, this was kind of switching the question to, if you were showing off the community, what would you put on that postcard? And so here we start delving into some really more important kind of detail things like the 4th of July event, pictures of the homes, the welcome sign, Manassas Drive, a postcard that reflects the diversity of the community, the events writ large, and then parks certainly factor in, the train station factors in. So people are starting to really zoom in now on, and it's interesting, you see Signal Hill Park, Walking Trails, Blooms Park, this whole thing the open spaces and parks that people identify with. The next question, again, this is zooming into downtown. So the first one was the community at large. And, well, there's, not sure what downtown Manassas Park is. And so, again, it's often good. Sometimes, this is the kind of thing that's like you're looking at it and you might be cringing a little bit because you know that you were working very hard on these issues. I happen to like seeing these answers because we know what all you're working on and we know what it will be. And it's kind of cool, and I will share this with you. I think it's important to hold on to the survey, because when you do a survey in 2 years, you're very likely to see some dramatic changes in people's perception. And we worked in a lot of communities where that's happened. And what they're calling out for, is some of these are things that don't even exist yet. It's kind of aspirational. So let's move on to the next one. This one is the top 3 places that you would recommend to someone visiting. And again, I love that we get this fascinating, combination of parks show up again, the community center, the library, a little snark there with nowhere. And then you get specific places like Preston's Pub and Wapa's and those things come in too. So this gives a chance to, okay, if someone's coming into town, where are you going to take them? And I love seeing a combination of public and private places. And you certainly can imagine what people might say in the future as well. The next one was, as we do branding, we always want to throw out there this idea of what people might suggest as tagline. And usually these responses really run the gamut. I happen to like some of these. Friends meet, families grow, your home. This is your home too. It's fascinating what you see here is shift when people start asking how to describe Manassas Park. You don't get negatives at this point. They're all positives. And so it's a fascinating thing where residents have this neutral feeling, and it's like, how do I want to describe it on a sign? And every single one of these is a very positive outlook. So you can tell there's this craving for the things that you're working on with the downtown effort. Next slide. Misconceptions. Boy, if this one doesn't just edify what you all already kind of know and hear, the bedroom community jumps right off the page. High crime one is odd to me. The part of Manassas, or part of Prince William County, is amen and hallelujah. I think you all know that. You do this every day as public officials, understand that. And so these, and what I like about this is the high crime and dangerous, we're asking what a misconception is. And so if a citizen says a misconception is high crime dangerous, that means that they don't believe themselves that conception is correct. They don't believe themselves that bedroom community is a correct description. They don't believe that rundown is a correct description. They don't believe. So I think it's a very interesting thing to see. Again, when you start mining the response for deeper insight, you start to get their real feelings of, oh, I'm neutral, but wait a minute. Look at the misperceptions. Look at how I want to describe the community, and they start kind of dovetailing together. Next slide. This one, fascinating to see, and looking at what kind of things are needed in downtown. I want to characterize some of these things so that you understand how we kind of see them is, a family-friendly restaurant. We certainly view family-friendly as a restaurant that you would take your family to, but that doesn't mean a restaurant where mom and dad can't have a beer. It just means it's a place that's good to take the family. And so that was certainly a number one. And that's a distinction from what you'll see down below, 43% say fine dining restaurant. And so fine dining oftentimes isn't viewed as the same thing as family friendly because, well, I know, Ben knows has 5 kids. I mean, you're not dragging 5 kids into a fine dining restaurant oftentimes. Family-friendly entertainment, the farmer's market, meat market, grocery, things you're just talking about in this meeting. And then you even see things like, gift shops and nightlife. 1 in every 3 respondents indicated these. And then, you even see things like, clothing stores, boutiques, wine shop in here. And then the specific ones actually end up kind of relating to the ones that we pre-programmed into the response. So a brewery could be, it could be nightlife. We actually work in a lot of communities where the brewery is a family-friendly entertainment because you're going to play cornhole or, some sort of sport on the lawn at the brewery and have outdoor entertainment while, the kids are doing that while mom and dad are socializing with their friends. Then you see things like museum, trampoline park, some very specific things like a coffee shop. And so dog friendly, that comes up a lot in these discussions. So just some things that people add to the mix and the comments and the other. The public spaces, this one made me very happy because as y'all are working on your downtown passive gathering spaces, plazas, courtyards, small greens were the number 1 response. So you get this fascinating thing where the big parks are acknowledged as some of the most prized parts of Manassas Park. And one of the biggest desires of public spaces are these smaller passive gathering spots like plazas and courtyards. And of course, going hand in glove in that with that is things like live music and events and public art. All these spaces end up being containers for those things, whether it's the educational experiences, public art events, and live music. You see a little bit lower ranking on things like art galleries, museums, which I will say from a planning standpoint, I think it's great to have those things. But when we're looking at plazas and gathering spots, we're looking at a low capital cost compared to a high return. And then you see related to this, when people ask other outdoor events, movies, kid programs, educational programs, fitness trail, community theater, outdoor pool, you get these fascinating dog-friendly spaces. So again, the comments wanted to be even more specific than what we were putting in the general answers. Next question, a more successful environment for businesses, better parking, lower taxes, hard to see a little thing there. For marketing, since we're doing marketing and branding, we're very glad to see advertising and marketing was one of the top responses. Since you're working together on creating a downtown and vibrant center, community events, sidewalks, more businesses, and again, dog-friendly areas, all part of what you're working on in Manassas Park right now. So again, this is like data verified kind of, wow, you're working hard on things that people are craving. When we're starting to get into the questions where we get attrition, because, this is when the hardcore survey takers they're soldiering through this. So you're getting things like a very strong, the most important thing identified here is creating a distinct identity for downtown. That was by far the number one. And then you see the number two is promoting tourism and recreation as falling in very strong here. And then I say that's number two. Yeah, that's number two. And then positioning Manassas Park as a place to open and operate businesses is number three. A little bit less so on the building pride of place with local residents, which is interesting because if you go back to that neutral kind of feeling that people had early in the survey, and now we're deeper in the survey, and folks are really concentrating more on, we want a distinct identity, we want to position us as a place for business, we want to have tourism and recreation, we want to have local businesses, but we're doing okay on private place. So you see this slight kind of shift here. I'm sure some of this is due to attrition, and I'm sure some of it's due to the nature of the question to get more specific. The next one, other communities, no surprises here. I mean, these are your surrounding, communities. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't something that, that kind of struck us as odd. I mean, if I'd seen, I don't know, personnel on here, it might have been, well, that's interesting. So next question. What distinguishes it? Diversity, less to do, less businesses, high taxes. The high taxes thing kind of runs through. Tight-knit community feel, the fact that you have a train station, very important. The size and location, you can see kind of speaks for itself. Next one. And then we get into how people hear about things. So social media, far and away, was the number one way people find out about activities, businesses, and events. Word of mouth almost always ranks high. What almost always never ranks high, a city website, and 1 in 4 said your city website was a way they find out, which is like, wow, that's great. So whoever is working on city communication or website needs to be commended, because we are not used to seeing 1 in 4 use the city website as their way of doing things. And then you see some specific things mentioned, like Patch, Inside Nova, Prince William Times, and school notices showing up in the other. Again, as we would expect, newspaper, TV, magazine, those and local websites, those are ranking really low. Well, how could it be better promoted? So again, we have social media is the number one way people find out about things. It's also the number one way the community could be better promoted. So we like that. Enhanced presence on regional website and advertising rank in here as high. And so things like billboards and brochures and print maps are less by comparison to those traditional ways. And then we did have do not want it advertised. So there's one in every crowd. I got mine. I want you to tell anyone else about it. The next question, what are ways that you could feel the character of Manassas Park can be better communicated to you? And so better website, better presence on social media. I actually had to ask Laszlo about less robocalls, because I've never seen that in a survey before. And I got to explain that you do have a robocall system. So apparently that has kind of showed up in the survey. Email, newsletter, and promotion. All these are great things that kind of tee us up for the branding part of this, because we're digging a little bit deeper on how to better communicate. And we view branding as a toolbox to do that. So I'm going to hand it over to Ben, unless we want to pause for any questions that you might have on the survey. Any questions? More
yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll kick off. So you had 223 respondents. What was do you have a sense of the overall number that you went out to? Just want to get a sense of what the completion rate of this was. You know, if you went out to, I don't know, so just throw out a number, 2,000, got about 10%. Just do you have a sense of what the total end was that you reached out to?
I'd have to kick that over to staff on how they distributed the survey on what touched to know what our percentage response rate was. On a survey like this, we're not accustomed to having much more than this for a community your size. And so I wasn't surprised by the number of responses. I'm sure staff could say, you know, approximate how many got an email blast or a posting, but, you know, when it's on social media and has several different things, it's just very hard to ascertain how many impressions it made.
Right. Yeah, that's the number. That's what I'm curious about. Is what were the total number of impressions, or how many were on the email list, or kind of get a sense of that. Not a critical question, more a curiosity question. But in terms of
Mark, I will throw this out to you. One of the things that we have found to be interesting about survey response to this type of survey is the response percentage tends to be inversely proportional to the population size. So the larger the community size, the much lower the response rate tends to be. And in fact, there's like a weird kind of eclipsing that happens. Like, I typically expect a really, really high response rate in really small communities. And I think part of it is just that psychology of really feeling like your voice matters. Anytime, I kind of feel like anytime we're cresting the 150 mark on a survey, it means that we're starting to get some data that we're comfortable with. We have some large communities that, honestly, we had a community down in Florida of 30,000. They pulled in 87. Wow. And it's like, that doesn't feel real comfortable in terms of those response numbers, because it feels like that number is really low. So, like Tripp said, it's one of those where, I keep going back to the real oddity that kind of sticks out is, can you imagine taking the time to go through and fill out a survey and then be so neutral about certain questions? And I think that's part of the dynamic that we're trying to shift that neutral tide into being evangelists and being, positive fans. And it's a lot easier battle than convincing somebody who's already on the negative camp. Having a third of your people that are like, hey, I'm just waiting for you to convince me. That's a pretty good place. That's a good spot. That's a good place to be. I don't mind starting with neutral. And I have to say, and Ben and I, we both do surveys. We rarely do them together. I did one for a community in Washington State, population 800. We had 400 respondents, because in that community, like, shame on you if you don't respond. And it's just the rule. Like, the smaller the community, the higher percentage rate response we get.
Yeah. Thank you. So, in terms of method, what just review for us, if you would, please. In terms of method, how did you make people aware of this survey?
So I have to get that over to staff, because our job was to design it. We did not deliver it.
Okay.
Give me a second, Emma. Okay.
Social media, website, water bill.
Hey, Mark, so we use social media, website, water bills, community center.
Yeah.
The social media, website, water bills. And water bills is usually one that is pretty strong.
That might directly correlate with the neutrals.
Yeah, that's interesting.
My water bill told me to take a survey.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm reading my water bill in that much detail.
Yeah.
Right. Or it might be that the water bill and all the high tax comments are directly correlated.
Right.
Yeah. You couldn't go out with
Or they're
tax.
conflating. Yeah,
Right, yeah.
conflating high water and high tax, you know?
Right.
No, thank you. Those are the questions I have. I'll defer to the other EDA members to ask their questions as well.
Yeah, this is Michael. I had one. I would like to get an understanding of that total that was sent out. So I do think understanding that what percentage responded would be really useful to know. But the question I had was, in some of those surveys where you were asking them, you know, what they liked about Manassas Park or some of the misconceptions, then you had the bar graph that showed the overall response, and then there was the other side of the slide was showing specific responses. So I guess my question is, how were those specific responses comments to the general question? Was that all part? I didn't quite understand how that distinction was made. Right. Whenever we design a survey like this, we always include an other, and then the other has a blank box to fill in so that people can write in something specific. Okay. We do that as a good survey design, because while we won't be able to easily be able to tick a box, we also want to accommodate the respondent who has a very specific thing they want to identify that they don't feel like we identified in our box. So when we present the data to you, we always include top responses of people who ticked the other box and took the time to write something in. Okay, and then for a quick follow-up to that, then it's possible that they may have selected the general category and also included other? Is that in some questions, yes, and others, no. Some were locked and some were unlocked. Okay, I got you. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Because some is like an either or, and then others were tick the ones, you know, as many as kind of apply. But a lot of them, we always try and keep an open end anyway. So got it. If you pick other, you're not picking one of the other, you know, the pre-program. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
This is Elder. I had a question related to representation of those responses on your survey. I remember when you came out last time to engage. I just wanted to, if you could speak to your efforts to engage the west side of the town, and if you could give any sense of their participation as it relates to the east side.
Yeah, if you want to go back then and navigate to that slide where we have the results on where people live. So 43 were identified as East End and 23% identified in West End.
Yeah, but that's important too. So because if you look at where it says downtown, only 9%. A lot of the people in the 43%, they don't know they're really part of the downtown. So once you get, some people say once you're east of 28, you're on the east side, when actually a big section of that is what's considered our downtown. So I think that 9% is very low for the downtown, and I think a lot of that 43% is actually part of the downtown. So I would guess, just rough guess, it'd be.
We absolutely agree. Yeah, we absolutely agree. We think it's probably fairly equal.
Yeah, probably slightly still tilted more towards the east, maybe a third, and a little bit less in the center. The apartments probably participated a little bit less. That's usually standard in what we're seeing, but nearly a quarter from the west end. So it's nearly a third for each, but again, slightly higher for the east, and then lower for the downtown.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. That's all I have.
Well, Ben, do you want? I would certainly want to accommodate any of the questions, but I do want Ben to be able to get to some of those.
Yeah, and
the more exciting.
Yeah, before we move on, again, we reached out again to thousands of people from the different links that we have, whether it's the community center, the water bills, the social media pages. It's not perfect. Again, it'd be nice to have a communications team on staff that does this stuff, but we all have a lot of other jobs. So we do reach out to thousands of people directly through the different channels that we had. Could it be more robust? Probably, but I'm very happy with kind of the number of results that we did have.
Well, just to dovetail on that, Laszlo, when you had your outreach campaign about the downtown plans, the communication went to the entire city, right, and possibly beyond, but used a lot of the same channels, I imagine, and the response rate feels imprecise. It feels similar. Is that correct?
Well, the difference was in the outreach for the downtown. I actually did in-person town halls where I went directly to the community. Once COVID hit, we scaled that back. We tried to do kind of virtual town halls for certain things, not as much participation, but the survey results for the downtown were the result of in-person town halls where we had a few hundred people that showed up, directly to witness us. So it was a little bit different. This is more of a kind of a digital outreach, similar to kind of our vaccination campaign as well. For the only difference, of course, with vaccinations, we ended up setting up booths as well at City Hall and Community Center to get people to sign up to get vaccinated. So that one was a little bit more robust. Again, that was my priority number one. I hate to say it, but that was priority number one for me the last few months is get our people vaccinated. So things run into conflict sometimes, but that was my focus over the last few months, along with other initiatives. But not to say that we didn't push this hard, but we really were trying to push vaccination as a number one priority for our community. So I apologize if this wasn't as robust as it could have been, but again, we have to prioritize as a city for what we're looking at, and we did push this. Not to say we didn't, but we were really more focusing on the messaging for vaccination, setting up booths. I did an event last Saturday where I was in the 28 shopping center with the health district, engaging with the local community, the local Spanish-speaking community as well, encouraging them to get vaccinated. So that's been our outreach effort priority over the last few months.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, go ahead, Trip. I was just going to say, as a matter of course, we used to not even do survey part of our process. We used to only do focus groups and roundtable meetings. We've done surveys more recently. We deliberately say from the outset, we're not trying to do a fully valid statistical sample, survey on a project like this. This dovetails, and Ben will explain it too as he moves into branding. This survey dovetails into the interviews that he did on site to help inform this, and we use it as a barometer for input, particularly this past year. We've had to use this more often than before, but we like having a survey. But we always say, I'm working on another project where we have to have a statistically valid survey as much as possible, but on ones like this, we don't try and do it. The work isn't worth it. You get the long diminishing returns.
Also, just
Sure. So for here, it's a data point to help corroborate other data that you're collecting.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that we found was it very much confirmed many of the things that we discovered during that discovery visit. And I think that was one of the really nice things was, there's so many things that you can talk about in a one-on-one conversation that you can never really gather in a survey. And, just to kind of lead into this next section of the conversation tonight, there's frustration. There's frustration at living in a place where you're constantly having to have a caveat. I live in Manassas Park. Oh, I know Manassas. No, it's Manassas Park. Like that simple interaction over and over again, that lack of awareness. You saw how low people scored the responses in terms of is Manassas Park known nationally? If we asked, is Manassas known nationally, that the results would have been completely flip-flopped, I think. I think that people perceive that Manassas is much more well-known. And when you fly in the shadow of that and literally share an identity, that starts to chip away a little at your self-esteem. It's kind of like, no, we're not that, we're this. And, the thing that was so beautiful about this whole process, though, was what's your differentiator? Your name is Park. You literally have Park in your name. You have the highest per capita green space of any community in Northern Virginia. Like, Park is integral into your character. And that's one of the things that was really, really exciting to us. So as we went through this brand development process, we typically focus on 4 main components. We look at our color palette. We like to select colors, allow us to use those to connect the dots. We then like to look at our typeface and select typeface that we can use to create consistency in our communication. We like to have a standard approach to graphics. And then we like to go through with a strategic approach to our messaging. So what I'd love to do is share with you where we feel like we're walking towards with those components. So to start off with our colors, we wanted to have a very rich, sophisticated palette that was kind of born off of the colors that we would see and feel in the park spaces. So we landed on a color system that was very naturally based. We've got 2 rich greens with an accent blue. We've got a rich brown as kind of a base, a green brown. We pulled some colors off of kind of leaves as they change colors over the course of the year, and then even chose to go with a kind of a charcoal gray, trying to avoid any like harsh colors, but creating this palette that really feels very nice together and creates this opportunity to have some colors that can kind of be yours, and colors that feel like they go with your name. When literally you have Park in your name, you want that to feel connected. From there, we start to look at the typeface itself, and with your system, we landed on a 2 typeface system. I always like to have what I'm calling a foundation typeface, a strong, solid typeface selection. This particular one is a sans serif typeface. It's designed to be relatively content neutral, but with a name like Manassas that has many A's and S's in it, as it does, you have to be really mindful with what typeface you pick so that you can create that consistency and that ease of legibility. And then we have that accent typeface. And the accent typeface is that kind of character-driven typeface that allows us to have a certain personality and look and feel. And we selected this because of the way that the word park looks in it. This particular typeface has several different what we call ligature variations. So in each one of our letters, we have different stylized options. But we really loved the flow that was kind of connected between the crossbar and the A, and then the really, really nice kind of swoop of the R. It allows you to be able to simply say park all by itself and have it visually be yours. And that was something that was really, really important for us, being able to own the idea of park. So from there, we started to kind of get into that naming strategy, because obviously one of the biggest tasks that we are faced with is, what do we call downtown? And, the things that we heard, obviously your community is Manassas Park. We know that a lot of locals just in kind of slang like to just say the park, we're from the park. We know that you have an east end or east side. We heard both of those terms used. We heard west end and west side both used. And then we also heard many, many different variations of what downtown might be. We heard people say, well, it's downtown, but does it feel like downtown? We heard some people said, well, maybe Central Park makes sense, but, there might be another city that kind of owns Central Park, right? Town center is synonymous with Northern Virginia. Pretty much every community has a town center, and if you're really fancy, you have a towny century. It's like they go through and they create every variation of town center. So as we started to think about all those dynamics and really started to get into that naming strategy, the thing that we finally landed on was we want your downtown development to truly be an investment in the heart of the community. We want that heart to serve as a bridge that brings together the west side and the east side. Not a third separate part, but instead something that truly brings it all together. And what we finally landed on was simply referring to it as Park Central, Virginia's newest downtown. And to us, there's something really, really beautiful about this idea that in Virginia's youngest city, you can be the home of Virginia's newest downtown. And through this, we created just a stylized icon that, was symbolic of this tree made up of many components and parts. We feel like that idea of Park Central really bridges together those two components. It allows us this opportunity through this system to really start to create a look and feel, a color pattern and texture that starts to capture this growing momentum in the heart of the community. It sets the stage for us to have kind of a community-wide branding system where when we're talking about Manassas Park as a whole, the entire icon starts to gather those colors and that diversity through the entire tree. As the system kind of continues to mature, we have these different variations where we have Park Central that's flanked on either side by Park West and Park East, using the colors of the palette to help denote this kind of color-based identity system for those two separate districts that make up this community, allowing us to really set up some kind of color-based systems that allow us through wayfinding signage and banner systems to really understand that you are moving yourself through a dynamic community with multiple components.
Yeah, if you don't mind going, to go back, Manassas Park again, I just want to point out an important thing. There's a very deliberate decision here to have Manassas be small and Park be large. This was part of the input that we heard over and over, but I just wanted to note it, that whenever you see this set up, you're going to see Manassas as a smaller typeface and Park as a larger typeface, as an honor and tribute to what we heard in the input, and as a distinguisher between Manassas and Manassas Park. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there, is that there's a deliberate reason why Park is larger, and a deliberate reason why it's using the more stylized typeface.
Absolutely. And thank you for pointing that out, Trip. It is, knowing that one of the biggest frustration points was the confusion with your neighbor. The thing that this does is this makes sure through its design and through its emphasis that people no longer think that Manassas Park is just a subset of Manassas, Virginia. This flips that script and puts the emphasis on your difference. And I think that was a very, very deliberate design decision on our part, was making sure that we did kind of flip that script. Now, Trip, feel free to jump in on this. I think one of the things that we wanted to do as well was we wanted to start thinking through and giving you these kind of building blocks for communicating. So, when your identity is that of a park and your imagery ties into that of a tree, it gives you all these different words to go from, grow, tree, roots, thrive, pass, play, relax, picnic, trail, shelter. And then there are these different phrases that really started to come up that really are maybe a little more related to events and activation and vibrancy, but things like concert in the park and dinner in the park, or these phrases like rooted in history, rooted in family, rooted by nature, and rooted in community. All of those kind of give us this building block for our ongoing communication system. And we see this as being a system that needs to be able to change as quickly as we feel like Manassas Park is going to change. So what I'm showing here is just kind of a system of almost brand maturity, where you might have this first wave launch that really kind of focuses in on the excitement around Virginia's newest downtown. And then you might move into using a phrase that helps the community to really see where their pride point is. And maybe we talk about how we're rooted in community and we've got this great history of being a true neighborhood. And then it might be that we start to grow a little more sophisticated, talking about 3 parts, 1 park, and then finally getting to that maturity level where you can simply have the ability to use that icon, know that icon can represent your place, and then just have a bold word like thrive. And that really helps us to kind of see that this is not about saying one thing, and that's the only thing you say. It's about having the right conversation, the right words for the right conversation at the right time with the right audience. So we feel like we've started to build those blocks for an evolving messaging system, so that as investment continues to happen in the community and opportunities and experiences continue to grow, your system can evolve with that. And then we even spent some time talking about how this brand messaging could extend with private sector development, whether we're talking about housing developments or condo type developments or loft developments or the picnic food hall or, the park shelter or playground social or pavilion co-work, trying to show how the private sector, as it creates creative solutions and investments in the community, can leverage this competitive advantage of living in a park and making it part of your character as it moves forward. And through this process, we also wanted to look at the city itself. Obviously, the city has a pre-established city seal. We did not want to go through and edit that. It's got, a history and a background to it. But we did want to show how, with some simple and thoughtful revisions and kind of adoption of that color palette, it gives our city the opportunity to have a really nice, sophisticated look and feel, so that as these projects continue to go on, that city truly serves as a sophisticated development partner, and you're able to take that essence of what this community has always been and be able to kind of take it and move it forward. And one of the things that I really love about this seal, I don't know how much time you might have spent looking at it, but it has literally always been made up of this shield with 3 diamonds. Even having those 3 diamonds repeated in the ring around the seal. And now with the development of this Park Central brand, it gives you that 3rd diamond. It gives you that combination of your east, your west, and your south, creating those 3 components that have always represented the community. And then we also started to look at things like how we might be able to use street banners through the community to have this consistent brand, but then also have the color-based variation through the different districts. And then even started to play a little with merchandise and being able to show how the brand can make its way into product and opportunities for for our businesses to profit and for our citizens to show pride in the place that they call home. So that's where we're going with this. And with that, I'd love to take a pause and just kind of open it up for your thoughts and questions and whether you feel like the strategy that's starting to emerge seems to make sense for Manassas Park.
Give folks a moment to come off mute.
So I think that you guys have done a fabulous job. I think it's really beautiful. I love the colors. I like the design. Even the text it's very nice. My one concern is that when we first met with you all, we talked a lot about how this is an extremely diverse community, so many different cultures. And I kind of wanted to see a little bit more representation of that through the branding. But I mean, I love all of it. I just don't really think that aspect was captured. But that's just my opinion.
Well, I definitely understand that. Oh, go ahead, Trip.
No, I was going to say, I think that's a great opportunity for us to look at what we've created and figure out ways to have that represented in additional brand extension, and also even the messaging. So when I think about this design of the tree with the different leaves in it, we didn't probably do a good job of maybe saying how those leaves might represent the different cultures that come together that make this beautiful tree. So I love that you're giving us feedback that we can think about building off of, even from a design and from a messaging standpoint. So this point well taken.
Well, and I will say that was, the reason why when you see how the different components come together, when I have the district brands, the individual areas had single color leaves. When I introduced the Park Central, I very, very specifically, had the 4 different colors come together to represent the central. And then when I created the variation for the community as a whole, I wanted to make sure that the tree had mixed leaves throughout the entire tree as the overall community logo. And I think that when you try to integrate the concept of diversity into a community brand, that's really where I was trying to go with it, was this idea of almost having those leaves being representative of the cultures, the people, the things that make up the community itself. And together they all come to kind of fuel that strong center. But I agree. I think it's one of those things that we can always go through and do a better job telling that story. But I think that it's also one of the things that I wanted to avoid that kind of first wave of diversity creative, if you know what I mean. It's like when you say, hey, we want to look diverse, there's kind of that first wave of creativity that is kind of like, oh, well, we can just do this, we can, just do that. And being able to truly capture that concept of diversity is a lot more complex than that. So I appreciate that comment, and I think that we can always do more to make sure that we can kind of go in and do a better job of having that icon become representative of more and more diversity. One of the things I like about it is because of its simple nature, you do have the opportunity to interchange all different kinds of colors with it. And you also, because of its simplicity, have the opportunity to use it as a one color icon and merge it with other imagery. And each time you do that, you start to contribute more and more meaning to it. So I think that as we move towards a more complete package, being able to show all the different ways that this simple icon can represent the community's diversity is the best possible thing for us. So I agree completely.
And if I may, I think that was a great point brought up by my fellow director. But additionally, there was some language that you had captured from the community that may not have been captured in some of the branding, and versus focusing so much on the diversity, looking at the inclusiveness of a community, meaning that we're an inclusive community, that we all come together, and the central aspect is where we all connect. And when I thought about the used to be the seal, and you were marketing being the newest downtown center, the newest center, our seal had our year that we were incorporated, for lack of a better term, but it wasn't captured in the new one. So I just didn't know if that was intentional or.
Well, that's not supposed to be a new seal, so we're not touching the seal.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Good.
Yeah, we don't want it to. The seal will remain.
As the official seal.
Exactly. That's our government
But
seal.
do we still want to capture the year on that new? It was right there. Yes.
Oh, on this.
Yeah, see, the seal still has that 57 in it, and I was simply pulling that center crest out, that center shield out.
Roger. But I just thought it would be good this to still reinforce the year as we brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be easy to do. We can pull in a scroll just like the treatment and the seal, and we could just have a scroll that had an established on one side and 1957 on the other.
Okay.
And yeah, we do have one of the issues with seals is we can't change it too much. Like we wouldn't want to take the year off of it. In the colonies, in the eastern states, a lot of the seals are, and I don't know if this is the case with your charter, but a lot of the seals are identified in the charter in old states. Out west, the seals, you know, like in Washington State and California, if you have a seal, you don't have to go to it doesn't change, if that makes sense. I know this sounds corny, but I don't know, Laszlo, you may know that. I don't know if the seal is part of your charter or not. We've worked in several Virginia communities where it takes a change. We can't ever change the seal too much because it takes a charter change.
Yeah, I've looked at the charter a lot, and I've never seen it there. I'm going to take a quick look, but I've never seen any reference to the seal in the charter. But I'll take a quick look. But I think we're too new for that to be the case. But I do know that.
It was probably voided by the time you became a city.
Yeah.
We worked in Leonardtown, Maryland, where the seal is literally described in state legislation.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, I'll take a quick look.
Yeah, but adding that date to the city variation would be really, really easy. I think that's a great idea. And Tripp, I don't know, do you want to talk just briefly about, you know, one of the things that we're not at the point yet, but, you know, as we move towards developing kind of the final package, one of the components for Park Central would be kind of a brand statement narrative. Would you want to tell them a little bit about what kind of things we want to hit on that?
Descriptive terms, and then I can talk a little bit about what we would do in a statement. This address is typically what we do is a brief narrative that describes either the community or the district that we're looking at, or both, depending on, you know, our scope. And this would lead to some sort of tagline or marketing statement as well. And so the narrative becomes an important, what we call it's kind of like a B script that can be picked up, and it acknowledges different components that are important to the community. And this is where we can address diversity and inclusion. We can address the natural areas. We can address the fact that it's a new city. You know, all those things can kind of come out in that narrative. And oftentimes what ends up happening is the phrases that we're using and the words that we heard get woven through that statement as well. So that's something that we haven't gotten to yet in this process, but we want to kind of get down this road a little bit and get some feedback. If you could just scroll back a little bit further.
Yeah, just update on the seal. Yeah, I found the section in the charter. It's not, we're not bound to any specific seal per the charter. It's just that the city clerk is the custodian and authorized to use the seal, but it doesn't mention kind of what the seal needs to look like. So.
Right. That's good. Thank goodness. And yeah, the Park Central piece, go ahead. Happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, just wanted to give the other directors, you know, an opportunity to comment. Michael, did you have any other thoughts or comments?
No, I'm good. I thought the two comments that were made were very appropriate. So, yeah, if they could address that, I think that'd be good.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a very, very, very thoughtful presentation, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, are there any further questions for related to the branding? Okay. Well, I will say we still have some more steps to do. We want to take your input. We want to engage with governing body as well. We still have some more kind of things to do in terms of, oh yeah, no more slides. Wayfinding signage, kind of entrance signage, things like that, but we wanted to engage with you early on in the process just to start getting good feedback that we did here tonight. So we're very appreciative of that. Now let me...
Thank you. Yeah.
Chairman and members of the authority, and we look forward to seeing merchandise at some point in the next few months because this wraps up having your hats and shirts and stuff. But
All right, if there are no other questions then, so thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Ben, Tripp. Thank you, Jeff, for that very impressive, comprehensive presentation. Mr. City Manager, are we able to let them go, or are they part of item 7C?
No, Ben and Tripp, their item is completed, so they can take off.
Okay, very good. Yeah, we don't want to keep you any longer than we need to.
have a great
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. You as well. So for our next item, we have 7C, the Small Business Development Update. Mr. City Manager, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. And for this agenda item, I'm going to turn it over to my Assistant for Administration, who supports the city economic development efforts, Chris Himes, who's been working on this project. So Chris, go ahead and take over with the introduction.
All right, thank you, Laszlo. And while you pass Jeff the ability to present, I'll kind of just give a quick background to the EDA here. But first and foremost, good evening, Chairman, members of the EDA. I'm Chris Hines, I'm the Assistant City Manager. And as Laszlo briefly just said, I've been kind of working on some of the kind of small business liaisoning efforts on behalf of the city. And through those efforts and just kind of my just general curiosity, kind of looking at local news articles, I came across Localite here, this platform, and met up with Jeff, currently I would say is it comfortable saying the CEO or kind of the chief administrative officer of this platform, but essentially my awareness came up with this. It was roughly around October of last year. The community of Blacksburg, I'm a Virginia Tech alumni, so I kind of pay close attention to what's going on, mostly for football reasons, but I'll put that aside for this purpose. But they were talking about just kind of the level of distress that the business community, the local business community, is facing there in the town, and their loss of revenue due to COVID restrictions and protocols, and just kind of how the general tightening down was happening across, all across the country, but specifically here in Blacksburg, and what type of response came through that was Jeff and his team addressed the need by partnering with the local chamber and local business community and developing kind of like a community digital marketplace that businesses could essentially onboard themselves onto for anybody to be able to download onto an application. And the businesses were able to market gift cards. They were able to, I would say, what was it, like a matching program for CARES Act funding through the town. So I just got more curious. I just want to learn about it just because my prior experience working in kind of card marketing interfaces from my previous job, and I was really intrigued. I thought they had a great scalable product, and the long-term goal here is, after he's provided his overview of the product here today, kind of the strategic decision would be, and will be brought back to the EDA to review, would be a devised memorandum of understanding that, after my discussions with the city attorney, the best kind of partnership that we could possibly set up with ourselves and Localite as a city would be having kind of marketed as a collaborative partnership between the EDA, our business community, and Localite. So that's kind of like the long-term one, and I can answer questions on that after the fact as we're still fleshing that out. But I figured it would probably make the most amount of sense, or before you decisioned on that, to have Jeff come tonight, talked about his platform, some of the backgrounds on it, and then answer your questions accordingly. So you can get some definitely some in detailed information about what he can possibly provide for our business community. So without further ado, Jeff, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfectly.
Okay, perfect. So as Chris mentioned, this was born out of the problems that the pandemic created. But what we found when we first started to the root cause analysis was that there was a large percentage of money actually, it wasn't specifically related to the pandemic, it was actually uncovered as we were looking at data. You guys know if I say, hey, what's a global e-commerce site, or what's a global social media site, or global search engine, you guys know those businesses at the top of your head. They all had banner years last year. And every time somebody has their discretionary funding, after they pay their bills, more and more their first place to go is online. And if it's one of those places, they're now going to global marketplace, and these funds are not going into our local communities because they're buying things from, around the world and getting them shipped. And so as we then continued to dig, we realized through study after study, it really comes down to convenience. And I'm a pragmatist. I shop at these places too. I don't want to say, hey, they're the root of all evil, but we realized that starting in Blacksburg, there was not a single convenient place to shop locally, to look at the small businesses. Yeah, there was a couple of, we've got our Facebook pages, we've got a couple of websites that are marginally up to date, but everything's mobile now, and there was no good way to do that. And so what we did was we created a digital marketplace, and we started it in Blacksburg, but I'll tell you how it stays local as the person moves around. And that's what I'm going to talk about briefly tonight. It's not going to be a long presentation, but how this app is already set up where it could be a digital marketplace for Manassas Park. So the concept is quite simple. It's just hard to execute, right? We have stores signing up and getting listed on the app, and then we have a second consumer base where we're advertising and getting them to, instead of going to their favorite .com global website, they first go to the app and they train themselves to do that. And there's a number of reasons that we'll cover why they'll continue to come back. But if we have both of them at the same intersection, then what you'll notice is we don't have competition from around the world, competing for those precious dollars that your local residents are going to spend. And so first and foremost, they're going to try to spend locally. So here's how roughly it works. Now, we talked about Blacksburg. If I am physically located in Blacksburg, it will show me all of the Blacksburg stores. And I can go in and I can purchase gift cards, I can send gifts and so forth. But if I were to drive to another location, what happens is it's not just that the center of gravity changes, but all of the stores that are not local drop out. So it's not like you keep scrolling and then, oh, look at that, I'm now in Fairfax. Oh, now I'm out in Loudon. They don't see those unless they deliberately search locations or if they physically go to those locations. Otherwise, it will appeal to I believe it was the last presentation, something like 70% of the survey or 80% that they lived in Manassas Park. Well, this is what they would see as all Manassas Park stores. So I'm going to apologize for 1 second. I actually lived in Manassas Park for a number of years, so I, like you, probably very sensitive to the fact that Manassas Park is not part of Prince William County. However, my designer, he came up with this slide, and I presented to the Prince William County government a handful of weeks ago, and then he went and had a baby, so he's been kind of unreachable. So I was able to change the text, but I'm not the right person to change the graphic. But having said that, what we do have the option is, instead of Explore Manassas Park, we could even perhaps put in imagery up there based on, let's just say you were coming up with a new design and you settled on that. We could actually, if we get the legal permission to do so, we could drop that right there on the app. That would further emphasize to somebody in Manassas Park that, yep, this is, it's a community of stores and businesses that are local. But also, when I lived up in Manassas Park, I worked all over the place. I worked in Roslyn, I worked in Rockville, I worked in DC. My family was in Springfield. I had friends all over the place, probably like many of you do. As I described earlier, if I drive around to all of those places, what happens is the Explore Roslyn, and only Roslyn stores show up. But if I spend most of my time, and if I live in Manassas Park, those are excluded from the results that come back. All right, so this is, I'm not going to describe everything on this slide, but built into this platform is the ability for a two-way communication between the merchant and the consumer. So the merchant can offer a variety of different promotions, and just like other push notifications you get on your phone, and of course people can opt out, but if a local business is offering a 10% bonus if you buy a card over the next 7 days, that can get pushed to local residents. We've got a birthday rewards program where if you give us your birthday, just the date, we don't care about the year, and the zip code, then stores in that zip code offer, here, have $5 on your birthday. But the catch is you have 30 days to use it, or else it goes away. So it functions like a coupon, but it creates an urgency for people to get back in. And one of the things that we're finding is that money, the coupon, shows up in the same digital wallet as the money that people buy. And so people don't think of it as a coupon. They actually think of it as, no, this is real money. I don't want to lose this. I want to go spend it. One of the other things I do want to point out on this, though, is we are in the process of developing other ways for money to be recycled back into the community. For example, we have a local high school band booster, and they're constantly trying to raise money, probably like every other band booster in the country. And right now they sell cheesecakes. Those cheesecakes are manufactured somewhere else. And so what happens is a parent buys these cheesecakes, and a percentage goes to the band, but that percentage that goes to the cheesecake expense gets taken out of the community and sent, to wherever the cheesecakes are manufactured. Same thing with cookies and popcorn, and if any of you have any students, you're constantly bombarded with this. Well, we are working with the band director and actually other nonprofit members to design a way where there can be a local card to buy gift certificates and so forth at local businesses. So more of the money stays within the community. And those are just just a number of examples we've got. Our roadmap, I should say, is every quarter we reevaluate it and we take heavy feedback from our stores. Because while we are a good technology company and have a lot of experience, our stores, they are the experts at how they reach their customers. And so one example is we have a restaurant that wants to sell tickets to local wine tastings. So that would be another way where if somebody in Manassas Park had the app, they can get alerted that, there's a wine tasting at a local restaurant, or maybe there's a craft class at a local retailer, so on and so forth. And it's another thing that makes them think, what's going on in my local community of business? So this is representative of the screen. We're actually going through a slight redesign to make it a little bit more sophisticated. But the important thing on this page is there's a number of visual cues that the person sees. So if they're looking at their restaurants, they can see, are there bonus promotions? Did they receive a birthday coupon? Chris mentioned we are set up where if there were some sort of sponsorship or subsidies, we could set it up so that if a consumer buys $100 at a merchant, that the government could potentially add $20 to that or whatever percentage. All is fully auditable. The finance piece of it when I say that. And then something else, we are in process of designing, actually it's in process of being built, but sometime in July we will have a multilingual version so that, Spanish will be our first or our next language, and then we will continue technical languages based on the community needs on that. And one final thing on this slide, I would be willing to bet all of you have found a physical gift card sometime and realized that it expired 6 years ago. And you're just like, well, there goes, that $25 wherever. Our app actually alerts the consumer if they have expiring balances coming up. And the reason why that's great is because it creates more engagement between the consumer, gets them back into the store. The more they frequent the store, the more they're likely to make future purchases. So the cost, there's a transaction fee of 5.24% plus 30 cents. The majority of that is the credit card payment processing. So we handle that, the business does not. And then that's it. There's no setup fees or no subscriptions ever. So if we do not deliver revenue to businesses, they don't pay us a dime. We do have a realtor, for example, who is signed up in our app knowing full well that people do not buy gift cards at realtors, but it's free advertising for him. So hats off for his ingenuity. The remaining part beyond the credit card, the majority of that is for marketing. And if a business chooses to put up a lookalike check-in signs, which helps expand and get the word out about us, we actually, have a program to reduce that fee. So I think that's the quick overview. The one final thing I would say is at this point, we are rolling out actively into 4 counties up in Pennsylvania, a central county in Virginia, it's a recent county, if you guys know Lake Anna. And then one other interesting dynamic is because we are in a college town in Blacksburg, we are now integrated with their orientation. And so by next summer, we've already started conversations with Harrisonburg, JMU, William & Mary, UVA, and so on. The reason why could be important for Northern Virginia is because a very high percentage of the families that send their students to all of these college towns live in Northern Virginia. And those parents are using our app in Blacksburg to send money to their students. They already have the app on their phone. In fact, I would be willing to bet that there's at least a handful of Manassas Park residents who already installed. But unfortunately, we ask for minimal information about profiles, so I can't give you a hard and fast number on that. So that's it. So let me open up to questions.
So what's the vision for how this could be applied to Manassas Park? Kind of a sketch, and I realize that we're just kind of talking at high level about the app right now.
So today, if nothing else changed, but you had a number of Manassas Park businesses register for our app, they would be on the app, and if you downloaded the app right now, they would pop up and you could immediately start buying gift cards. So there's no technical changes that have to happen to make, this occur. But one of the reasons, in discussing this with Chris, that we have found is if, my team goes out and tries to cold call businesses, we're just one of a billion vendors out trying to get their attention. And so if you believe that this could be part of that strategy to, one tool in your toolkit to create more community focus, having you support this, that would go light years in not only getting businesses to sign up, but then get your residents to use it. And that's really the key.
Yeah, so just think of this again, there's no necessary investment from the city's part that we have to do. It's really just part of our ongoing small business development program to try to organize our small businesses to help them compete with, as was discussed before, the growing, the Amazons of the world, the Walmarts who are really dominating market share, and us, being able to leverage tools to help our businesses compete with that. And again, there is possibilities for us as we get additional federal funding for recovery to focus dollars locally and help customers kind of reconnect with local businesses. So we're just evaluating different tools to add to our toolkit to help our businesses, and this is one that could be available.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Chris Himes. I just wanted to kind of chime in that it is not uncommon for EDAs to partner with these types of community card type platforms. In fact, I believe it was relatively recently that in Manassas, their EDA rolled out a partnership with a specific community card platform. I can't remember what it was. For me, it was just doing my due diligence and understanding what are the net benefits and incentives that are out there. And I do think that based off of how people utilize kind of like card-based platforms and also the net benefit to the business in terms of free marketing and free ability to scale to communities that are outside of a given area, because a lot of those community card programs are kind of restrictive in kind of how you're able to access it and how you're able to spend. This one really isn't, and the businesses get the money right away, and that's the big part, is that float is not caught up somewhere. It is, as soon as you hit submit, it directly goes to that business of which the person then goes to vend. And usually when that's the case, people will usually show up with the gift card, but then spend more than just the gift card amount it's usually deducted from it. So that's kind of the benefit there. Whereas if you have a net balance, people try to kind of tailor their expenditure to the exact amount they have left on the remaining balance. So it's just the nature of how they spend. And so as we roll out like a small business kind of development platform for, we're building out our city center locations, this would be kind of like an onboarding platform for them. So not only we're engaging them with setting them up for how they're going to be building into the spaces, all the lease agreements and stuff, but also showing that, hey, this is the partnership opportunities that you have. This is what we utilize. This is how you can become part of like the business and we're part of that community overall, the business in Manassas Park. And these are who are on it as well. So people kind of get an understanding of, they're not alone out there. Everyone's kind of utilizing this digital marketplace. And this is the kind of reach that it has. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's very helpful. That helps me.
So, this is Michael. So, in light of that, you're looking for sort of an endorsement or partnership with the EDA to offer this to the businesses that are going to be part of our new downtown. And I guess the question there is, I was at the groundbreaking. I just don't remember the number of businesses that we would be potentially doing this with initially. We're talking about the movie theater and the coffee shop initially.
It would be every business that currently exists. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I'm saying it would be initially every business that currently exists, restaurant, retail within the city. So the ones that already exist at the City West Side and Kent Village Square, the businesses located in our. Route 28 corridor, as well as the, I can't remember the shopping center, Andrew's shopping center, the one up by the 7-Eleven. So we would actively go out and engage them, train them up on the abilities of the platform, answer any questions. And that's where Jeff implied that the power is with the partnership with the city through an agreed upon memorandum of understanding, some sort of agreement that, it's got not like a binding agreement, but kind of like a relationship, kind of collaborative agreement, just to get as many as we wanted. Because Jeff, I can't remember from the briefing or just our own discussion of what it takes to kind of have like a perceived built out community in the marketplace. So if you are open the app and you see like one business, you're like, oh, but if you roll on the app and you see like 30 businesses, that's a little different. This is restaurant and retail. It can be smaller businesses. You can offer a different amount of products and suites on there. So it can be kind of, consultancies. The nature of the business not necessarily restricted to just restaurants and retail. So we have a pretty strong business community overall, and it's really just who is willing to buy into it.
Okay, and then my other question was, you talked a little bit about when you move from one community to another community. With some of the businesses outside of Manassas Park, are they, say for example, up and down Liberia Avenue, they could potentially be using this service as well, right? Is that when I'm going up and down those areas, will I have a different set of options in terms of businesses? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so let's assume that you had a number of the businesses by 66, and if you were up there, you would get a different set of businesses that show up. The way that the radius is built, it's also a little bit by store density. So the more Manassas Park businesses that sign up, if you're in Manassas Park, less likely you're going to have a Manassas business that's pretty close to Manassas Park, right?
Okay.
And we do that because it creates a better consumer experience as long as they get something that's close and feels local and it's a small business.
Okay, so getting a higher density gives a better result, so to speak.
Yep.
Okay.
Better user experience, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I have a quick question. I hope it's quick. So when I hear the term partnership and getting the city's endorsement, are there any other companies or any other services that are comparable to this? Or this is, I'm asking in terms of this app.
There are different companies that do components of it and different solutions for the underlying problem. For example, Chris mentioned community cards that are apps that you buy this card and it sits in escrow. You use the card in a business. Thank you, Chris, for bringing that up, that when you buy here, we go straight to the business. We don't hold those funds. Obviously, Google is a competitor, right? Because you can search for businesses by distance, but Google does not, of course, put a number of the limitations on their service that we are choosing to, because we are focusing on, small local businesses. So that's kind of the best answer I can give you. We've not, we spent some time researching. We didn't find any apps out there that did exactly what we did. Obviously, there's a large number of apps out there, though, so I can't promise, but I can give you we did do due diligence on this, and we haven't found anybody who does it exactly this way.
And the only reason I ask is that if somewhere down the line, if another app that came on site and wanted to engage or leverage relationships with our businesses, are they precluded from doing so because we endorsed you on this or partnered with you on this?
No, I mean, Chris, you can speak from the city's point of view, but in none of the localite terms of conditions are businesses ever restricted from doing any kind of business with a competing.
Yeah, and I actually had a discussion with Patrick Small. He's the City of Manassas Economic Development Director. They use a platform now called Yifty. He also got sent of Local Light as well, kind of after the fact, and he was also interested. So there really isn't a disclusive nature to any of these platforms. They're all volume based, so the goal is to get as many businesses as possible. So if you overlap, that's on the consumer, not necessarily on the community card platform provider. In a sense, it almost is how many possibilities do we have at our disposal as a city to get our businesses their best foot forward for people to be able to spend more dollars, and especially as we build out our downtown and get more businesses located in kind of what we want it to be in the center of part of our city. As many options as possible to keep dollars from leaking outside of our city, and then have our businesses able to cheaply market and engage consumers, with what I would consider to be a technology that wouldn't necessarily be free in any other sense of the form. So that was another good value prop, is it's a free tool for them to utilize.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity.
Yep, thank you. Are there any other questions for Jeff at this point? Good questions, by the way, Al and Michael. Thank you. Laura, do you have any questions for Jeff?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Jeff, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I'm familiar with the Blacksburg situation myself, and have friends there who have been affected economically, and so I appreciate where this is coming from and what you're trying to do. So thank you. So I don't believe we have, without any other questions, Jeff, thank you again, and we can move on to our next item of business.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Chris, for bringing Jeff forward to us.
Bye-bye.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the chairman's report. I don't have any particular comment over and above everything that we've said, except to just thank Laszlo and team for bringing forward such a fulsome and comprehensive update for this EDA. So thank you all for making this a really, really productive time together. That's all for me. So we'll transition to the next, and that is the director's report. So fellow directors, any items to report on your end? Laura, Michael, Al?
I have nothing at this time.
No, not at this time. Thank you.
All right, very good. And city manager, we'll transition to the city manager report. Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, thank you all very much for your time and input this evening. Just to let you know, I'm not sure what's going to happen with the state declaration of emergency for COVID-19. It sounds like it's going to expire on June 30th. The federal one, I believe, expires September 30th. So we're going to have to look at that as a city as well and determine what we can do. But what our timeline is going to be for ending the local state of emergency. But how that impacts this specifically is the meeting rules, right? So historically, public meetings have to be in person, and we've been allowed to utilize these platforms because of the state declaration of emergency and the specific authority that was provided by that declaration. So stay tuned. I'll be in touch with the chair as we figure this out as the governing body and consulting with the city attorney. But it's more than likely that beginning in July, meetings are going to have to take place in person to avoid any violations of public meeting laws. Again, there's the mask rules as well. It's actually illegal to wear masks in Virginia. that kind of was waived with the emergency declaration, right? So that's why people are able to wear masks now. So I think there's discussions about how they're going to allow that to continue to happen, but I don't know if they're also going to be discussing how to allow for ongoing, remote meetings as well. So no clear answers tonight, but I just wanted to give you all that heads up just in case at the next meeting when we do convene may have to be 100% in person. So I just wanted to bring that to your all's attention. But again, it's good news. It just means we're heading in the right direction in terms of the virus. So.
Thank you. All right. Anything else, Laszlo?
Nothing else from me. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Final item of business is adjournment. It's been a full evening, and I'm really grateful to all of you for your engagement, all the questions, all the discussion, all the suggestions. These are always really, really good and fulsome meetings. So thank you for a really good and productive meeting. And for those who are tuned in, want to thank you also for sticking with us this long. So at this time, we'll move to our last item of business, adjournment. Do we have a motion on the table to adjourn the meeting?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, and almost a third there. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, and there are no nays, so we are hereby dismissed. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you all. Have a great night.